Hi, I'm Sophia. I'm a master's student at the University of Iowa, and I'm a member of the Iowa City Science Booster Club.
Hey, I'm Karina. I'm also a master's student here in the biology department and also part of the Iowa City Booster Club. This week we have 2 activities for you. I'll be going first with the virtual scavenger hunt, and Sophia will...
Yep, I'll take over after and do a couple demos, sort of looking at the pH of different items that you would sort of easily find in your household.
Yeah. So with that, I'll take it away. So today I'm going to take you on a virtual scavenger hunt, and I thought it would be fun if we went outside of Iowa. So I decided to take us to the National Museum of Natural History in Washington, D.C. You can either Google the museum itself. It will appear really easily, or I have a link here. But I thought it'd be fun to try to solve a riddle as we go through the scavenger hunt. So today, how did the Tyrannosaurus Rex feel after going to the gym? So we're going to go through this and collect a letter to solve this riddle. So I have some directions explaining how to follow along at home. As you see here, this is the museum. So this is the whole map of the museum, but today we're only going to be in this green area, the Hall of Fossils, Deep Time. So we're going to start where it says main entrance. You can see all these blue dots. So that's a point where you can go. But so right now we're going to go to main entrance where I am now. So when you click that at home, you should see this journey through deep time. And if you want to get rid of this map, you can always click, and so you can see the whole screen. So this exhibit I thought was really cool, Journey Through Deep Time. So we're going to be looking at how life evolved as the Earth has been around. But interestingly enough, this exhibit is set up backwards. So we're going to start pretty recent, relatively recent, and then we're going to go all the way back into deep time, which is millions, billions of years, as the Earth is very old. And I just want to point out, this is a timeline of Earth, but instead of a timeline that you usually see straight, this timeline is circled because deep time is just so big that if it fit on one long straight timeline, it would be gigantic. So they decided to curl it up. So right here in the middle is the beginning of time, and then it's kind of bare until the first signs of life appear in the water. And then as we keep going, organisms start evolving, and then eventually we get on land. And then people are more familiar with these dinosaurs. And then it goes all the way up until humans, but we're not going to go that far. So today we're going to start. The first question I have, can you find the skeleton of a large extinct mammal that looks like an elephant? So in order to start, you can click on these blue arrows to go through the exhibit. And as you can see, I'm just dragging my cursor to look around. You can look around 360. So it's a little easy to get lost, but as long as you follow these blue arrows and my directions, you'll be able to navigate through it fine. So I'm going to click on this to enter the exhibit. And so remember, my first question was, can you find the skeleton of a large extinct mammal that looks like an elephant? So I'm looking around. That doesn't really look like an elephant to me. There's nothing really here. And then here. So these tusks kind of remind me of an elephant. And then, as all museums have, an exhibit sign. So if you, using this toolbar, you can zoom in really close and see American Mastodon. So that's what this huge skeleton is called. And if we read this sign, mastodons are more distinctly related to living elephants than mammoths are, more like third cousins than siblings. When mastodons went extinct, the distinct history of their genome The complete set of their genetic information was lost forever. So these are pretty big. This is, if you can see this little image here, this is what they would have looked like. So it does look like an elephant to me. So I think that's going to be our answer, American Mastodon. So if I go back, okay, so our answer was the American Mastodon. So I'm just going to fill this in, and you can type on this. I'm just going to write make sure you spell everything correctly, otherwise M-A-S-T-O. Okay, so we have American Mastodon for our first answer, and you'll notice there's a blue circle on hovering over one of the letters of each answer. So that's going to be the letter that you collect for this answer, and then at the end you can fill in the answer to the riddle. So the next question we have, head forward into the rainforest display. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to zoom out so we can see. And again, you see these blue arrows. Just follow those. So it said go to the rainforest. So this is the rainforest spread across the globe. So I'm going to go here. And it looks like we're in the right section. And so how long ago did rainforests cover North America all the way to Alaska? So if we look, you're going to have to look through some of the signs. You can always zoom in. This isn't really taking advantage of the trees. Rainforest spread across the globe. So I'm going to peer closely at this. So it says 60 million years ago, the climate was warmer than it is today. From the equator to the poles, dense wet forests covered North America all the way to Alaska. So I think our answer for this one would be 60 million years ago. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in that. Okay, so remember, it looks like we have a D and an I so far for our riddle. So we're going to continue on to our third question. So it says, continue to T-Rex and the last American dinosaur. So I'm going to go back to where we just were. Zoom out so I can see where I am. I'm going to turn around. This is where we just were. And so T-Rex and the last American dinosaur. So I'm going to click that arrow. Now we're in a different part of the exhibit. So if we go back to look at the question, what time period were the dinosaurs thriving in? So remember that we are going through time backwards. We started in one of the ice ages, and now we're going to the dinosaurs. And so if we read this, 66 million years ago, death from outer space. So if we're looking through this talks about the asteroid that crashed into Earth and then caused the dinosaurs to go extinct. But remember, our question was asking what time period were the dinosaurs thriving in. So as I'm reading this, I don't really see that much. I'm going to zoom in on this sign. Look around. And if you see in this paragraph, at the end of this paragraph, dinosaurs were thriving at the end of the Cretaceous. There was no indication that they would go soon extinct. So I think that's our answer for this third one, Cretaceous period, the end of the Cretaceous period. So I'm going to fill that in. Oh, wait, I think it's end of the... And remember, spelling is very important as we're trying to solve the riddle. So you have to zoom in, Cretaceous. I am not the best speller myself, so it's okay if you have to double check a few times. O-U-S. Okay, so far we have a D, we have an I, and we have an N. So we're going to go through, travel down the hall. So I'm going to go back again, I'm going to zoom out so I can see where I am. And feel free to read all these signs, take a look at all this exhibit as you're going through. There's a lot of cool information, especially if you're interested in dinosaurs. So I'm going to continue down so we can see the rest of this display. And so let's see what the question is. What are the 4 things that happened within days after the asteroid? So if we're looking at this, we can see this huge meteor going to crash into Earth and cause this mass extinction. And what's really cool about this display is how they have it set up. So it says within days after the impact, within weeks after impact. And so you can see how there was a lot of destruction and within days and then also within weeks, and the climate really began to change. But then you see within years after impact, recovery begins. And so we'll go more into that. But remember, the question was asking what happened within days. So we can either look here within days, or there's more information on the info display down here. So within days, the question asked to list 4 things. So it looks like these are the 4 things: shock waves, giant tsunamis, wildfires, and dust and water vapor. So I'm going to go back. And the first thing was shock waves. Shock waves. The second thing was tsunamis. Yes. Okay, so that's 2 of the 4 things. And then we have wildfires and dust and water vapor. Wildfires. And then the 4th thing is dust and water vapor. Okay, so we figured out that answer. So again, our 4 letters that we have collected are D, I, N, and O. So we're going to go down to our 5th question. What plants began to flourish years after the asteroid hit? So as I said, it kind of goes within days, within weeks, within years, or within months, and then within years. So the question was asking about plants that recovered within years. So you'll find it in this area where under within years. So if I zoom in closer, again, the question is asking what plants began to flourish. So let's take a look. It says surviving plants and animals began to recover. And the first thing on this, it says ferns flourished just after the impact. So with that looks like our answer. So ferns, I'll just fill that in. Okay, so that fit. So again, the 5 letters we have collected are D, I, N, O, and S. Okay, so we're halfway there. So it says continue down the hall until you come to a fork in your path. Enter the Cretaceous Sea exhibit. So we're going to go back. I'm going to really have to zoom out. So again, just follow the blue arrow. So this is the fork. We can go left or go right. So we're going to go left. We're going to continue on with dinosaurs, but instead they're the sea dinosaurs, because remember that life started in the water before it went on land. So the question asks, to the right is the skeleton of a giant sea predator. Inside it, you can see the contents of what it last ate. What is the name of this ancient giant sea predator? So I'm going to zoom in. This is what it's talking about, this huge skeleton. And as you can see, the hands almost look like flippers, which would make sense since this lived underwater. So I'm going to take a closer look at this giant sea predator. And it says, though marine vertebrates came in many shapes and sizes during the Cretaceous, most were predators. So that's not really telling me what the name of this was. So let's go back to the sheet, and we have a hint. Carefully examine the 3 animals, 2 meals, 1 fossil sign. So I'm going to take another look around, and I see right here 3 animals, 1 meal, 1 fossil. So I'm going to zoom in. And as the question talked about, this rare fossil prefers stomach contents, so it can show you what it last ate. But we're looking for the name of what this animal is called. So the large bones of the Pliosaurus, a marine reptile, to your right were found inside the rib cage of the Tuluosaurus. So that would be the answer to the question, the Tuluosaurus. This might be a tricky one to spell, so I'm going to make sure that I spell it right. So Ty S. Okay. So that fit. So that's our 6th letter that we've collected. So again, we have a Dinoso. Okay. So we're going to go on. So it says click on the arrow going straight ahead, then continue to the left onto Jurassic dinosaurs, plants, and insects. So I'm going to zoom out. Going to turn around. And again, feel free on your own to look at all these different dinosaurs and read about all the cool information about this time period. But for now, I'm going to continue forward onto this blue arrow, and it looks like we have a lot of options here. So I'm going to go back to the sheet. So continue to the left onto Jurassic dinosaurs, plants, and insects. So this would be, so right here, this blue arrow to the left, I'm going to continue on, and it takes me to this whole display. So let's see what our question is. To the right is a display that discusses Jurassic insects. What are the 3 ways that ancient insects ate plants? Modern insects still eat plants these ways. Wow. Okay. So let's take a look. We might have to do a little hunting because there's a lot of information. So it says caught in the act. Who done it? These fossils capture evidence of insects eating, laying eggs, and mimicking plants during the time of the dinosaurs. That's pretty cool, but that's not the answer we're looking for. So let's go over here. It says more than one way to eat a plant. Over hundreds of millions of years, insects evolved many different ways to eat plants. So this kind of sounds like this is what we're looking for. Each left telltale marks preserved on plant fossils. Insect bodies reveal feeding styles too, like long snouts for sucking up sugary plant fluids. You can see the same plant-insect interaction in your own backyard today. So that's pretty cool. So if we kind of look down here, it looks like these are going to be the 3 ways: munching, sipping and pollinating, and boring. So I'm going to go back and fill out one at a time. Munching is the first one, and that fits, so that looks like the right answer. And then we had sipping and pollinating. So sipping and pollinating. Okay, and then we have one more, which is boring. Okay, so that looked like it all fit. So let's see. Head to the left to the main circulation path and the age of the humans bridge. So we're going to go back. I'm going to zoom out. And here it says head to the left. It So this is it, main circulation path in the age of humans bridge. So I'm going to click on this blue arrow, and then let's see what the question is. Look to your left and examine the sign about the T-Rex. Record your most interesting finding about the T-Rex. So you can look at this display. This is a fossil of a T-Rex, and it looks huge. Looks like it's eating this other dinosaur. So I'm going to zoom in. King of the carnivores. So in its time, Tyrannosaurus was the largest meat eater in Western North America. It feasted on dinosaurs large and small, including plant eaters like this Triceratops. So this looks like another dinosaur that's eating. Few, if any, animals could take down a healthy adult Tyrannosaurus. As the apex predator, the Tyrant King impacted the entire community. Each meal Tyrannosaurus killed or scavenged helped keep populations of some species in check and provided leftovers for others. So you can continue reading on more information about this T-Rex, but I think that I'm going to put down for my fun fact that the T-Rex ate other dinosaurs. T-Rex ate other dinosaurs. Very cool. So it says the final letter is the second letter of the species name of T-Rex. So in that case, it would be this R, the second letter. So let's see if we can solve this riddle. How did the Tyrannosaurus Rex feel after going to the gym? So remember, our first letter was D, I, N, O. So I'm going to fill in that. So we've got a D, I, N, O. And then our last four letters are S, O, R, O. Actually, I made a mistake. It should be E. Okay, so oh wait, sorry everyone. Okay, yeah. So, how did the Tyrannosaurus Rex feel after going to the gym? Dinosaur. That makes sense. I also feel dinosaur after going to the gym. So, that's all I have for today. Again, there's so many exhibits in this museum. So, if you're curious, you can continue on and continue through this exhibit by following the blue arrows. But if you want to explore more of the museum, you can just click up here to bring the map back, and you can see there's the ground level, the first level where we were on, but there's also a second level, and you can go through the whole museum and check it out.
All right. Hi everyone. Again, I'm Sophia. I'm going to show you guys this pH activity. But before we start, I want to just sort of go over what acids and bases are. So we have this thing called the pH scale, and we use this as a sort of reference point to determine how acidic or basic something is. So anything that's 7 is neutral. Moving away from 7 and towards 14, it's more basic. And then moving away from 7 and towards 0, it's more acidic. And so one way that you can sort of think about this is common items that you have in your house or foods that you would eat. So for example, lemon juice is a strong acid, and it has a very sour taste. And as another example, like grapefruit you might eat, or orange juice, those are all things that are acidic, and one sort of discernible characteristic of them is their sourness. Basic compounds that you might find in your home are things like cleaning reagents that tend to be kind of slimy, and well, not all of them are edible, but the ones that are taste bitter. And so different basic and acidic compounds sort of exist everywhere, and pH is a really integral part of both sort of how we function as organisms and also how everything else exists in the world. So as an example, our blood is about 6.4 pH, so it's pretty close to neutral. So sort of some other examples, our stomachs are really acidic, so they produce a lot of hydrochloric acid. And that acidity is really important for breaking down the proteins in the foods that we eat. And it's also actually really important for killing off harmful microorganisms that might enter into our intestines that we don't want there. Other examples, for example, are toothpaste. So toothpaste, they kind of range, but some of them tend to be basic. And the reason is because the basic toothpaste can neutralize some of the acids that occur in our mouth that can actually cause tooth decay. So this is why we brush our teeth, twice a day. Okay, so one sort of cool fact, one other cool fact about the pH scale is that these numbers, sort of from 0 through 14, they're not linear. So the difference between, for example, 4 and 5 here is actually tenfold. So something that's 5 is 10 times less acidic than a 4, or something that's 3 is 10 times more acidic than something that's a 4. And so sort of if you keep going as an example, the difference between something that's a pH of 4 and a pH of 8 is 10,000. So 8 would be 10,000 times more basic. And so once you start getting into these extremes, we're really talking about extremes. So things that are 0 in terms of like the pH scale, things like battery acid, are things we probably shouldn't consume. And then on the other extreme, similarly, things like oven cleaner have a pH of around 14, and those are also things that we want to keep out of our bodies. So one other sort of last thing I'll mention about pH before I start this activity is that aside from our sort of our bodies and the importance of pH in breaking down proteins in foods, maintaining a pH for the proteins in our bodies to function properly, pH is also important for one big thing is the ocean. So the ocean sort of acts as a carbon sink, and what happens when carbon dioxide dissolves in water is that it produces carbonic acid. And that carbonic acid reduces the pH of the ocean, and that can result in organisms that have seashells that can result in those shells starting to dissolve. So again, the maintenance of pH in different environments is extremely important for ecosystems, our bodies, for all of these different things to function the way they should. So now you might be wondering, well, how do we measure pH? And so today we're going to use these kits to sort of figure out how we can figure out the pH of different compounds. And so I'm going to just sort of show you what's in here. So there's a sort of a sheet in here that gives you instructions. There's also a material safety data sheet in the back. And the red cabbage that we're going to be using is not harmful. It contains pretty standard ingredients, but you want to avoid putting this near your eyes or in your mouth. So the red cabbage is in this small container labeled red cabbage jiffy juice. There's a cup with it. The cup has sort of volume markings. There's a little spoon. There are 3 tubes that are labeled. I'm going to put these 3 on this side because they're for a different activity. And then you should have 1 pipette, some pH strips. The pH strips are going to go with these ABC label tubes, so I'm going to put them on this side. And you should have the scale that I've been sort of using earlier to explain pH. And then you should have this little mystery kit scale, and I'm going to put this on this side with the ABCD tubes and the strips. So the first activity that I'm going to do is the red cabbage activity. So red cabbage can act as a pH indicator. What that means is when you add in different compounds that react with the red cabbage juice, you can get a color change, and that color change is indicative of the pH. Right. So in red cabbage, there's a compound called anthocyanin, and that causes a color change depending on the environment. So if it's an acidic environment, it'll go towards these sort of reddish pinks, and if it's a more basic environment, it'll change towards these blue greens. And so let's go ahead and try. So again, here's my red cabbage powder. I'm going to open this up, and then just add in with my little spoon. I'm going to add in a scoop or 2. You only need a little bit. All right, so I'm going to do that. And then I have some distilled water here. The tap water that we have is a little bit basic in Iowa, and so I'm using this just to make sure that I'm closest to neutral. But you can also try with tap water. It might change your results very slightly. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add in this water, and I'm going to go up to the 50 ml mark on my cup. All right, right about there. I'm just going to mix this up a little bit. All right, so I have my red cabbage juice, and if you compare it to the pH scale, you should see that it falls right around 6 or 7. And so now what I want to do is, let's say I want to figure out what the pH is for baking soda. So I have some baking soda here, I have some vinegar, and I have some lemon juice. And you can test whatever items you want or have in your kitchen. You don't have to test these. These are just the ones that I'll test out today. So I'm going to start with the lemon juice. So lemon juice is pretty acidic. So we should see that when I add this in, we should see this go towards the more sort of red or pink colors. So I'm just going to start adding some in. There isn't really like a requirement for how much you add. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in a couple of these. And shake it up. And so I don't know how clearly you can see this, but you can see that it's now sort of moved towards these red pink colors. And now the pH, I would say, is sort of between 2 and 3, it looks like, based on the color of this cup. All right, so that tells me that the pH of lime juice is about between 2 to 3, which is what it is. All right, so the next thing that I want to try out is baking soda. So I'm going to go ahead and just dump some in. All right, you might want to be careful with this because the baking soda does tend to start foaming up, and then I'm just going to mix it up. All right, so as you can see, the red cabbage juice is starting to move closer to these blue colors. So I would say this one is like between 8 and 9, which is also the pH of baking soda. And so one kind of cool thing about this is you can add in an acid and then add in a base to neutralize that acid, which will sort of take it in the other direction. I also want to test out vinegar, but I'm going to avoid putting the vinegar in here because I just added baking soda and I don't want that sort of volcanic eruption where there's a lot of carbon dioxide release and then there's this big foamy outpour. So I'm going to use this second cup. And you can just pour this out and there's enough cabbage juice to do this activity multiple times. So I'm going to start over with some cabbage powder. Okay. So now, again, I added in some more cabbage powder to a new cup, my water again. All right, and now I'm going to go ahead and add in the vinegar and see what that does to the color. So again, right now this is pretty purple, so between like 6 and 7. All right, so let's see what this does. All right, so that turned really light, and again, sort of towards 1 and 2. So you can see that the pH of vinegar is probably around also 2 to 3. And so you can try this activity with as many items as you want. There's enough red cabbage for you to sort of comfortably pour it out and restart if you want, or you can go back and forth the way that I did with this one, with the lemon juice and the baking soda. And then there's some information in here that could be helpful for you in terms of ideas of things to add. One other thing I will note is that if you want to make like a full color scale, there's some ideas in here on how to do that. That would be pretty cool and look pretty. But it's sort of up to you. I would recommend testing out different items in your household. It's fun to watch the color change, and you can figure out the pH of all those different items. Okay, so that was the red cabbage activity. So now I'm going to shift into pH strips. And these operate sort of similarly to the red cabbage in that there's a color change, and that color change can indicate to us what the pH is. Okay, so in this activity, we have 3 tubes. They're labeled A, B, and C. And these are, you don't know what these are. We're going to figure out what they are using our pH strips over here. And so this scale is sort of a reference for us. So we'll figure out what A, B, and C are, and then we'll see if we can match those pHs to any of the items on here, and then determine which of these items corresponds to these tubes. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. If you want to pause to do it yourself and see if you can figure out what these are, feel free to do that. But basically, all I'm doing here is just taking off the cap. I'm going to open up my pH strip packet, and it has a scale inside that you'll use to compare the color of the strip to. And so here's one strip. I'm going to dip it in, and right now I'm measuring the pH of tube A. I'll take this out, and you can see that well, I actually don't know how clearly you can see it, but it's a kind of a dark green color. So when I match it to my scale here, I would say that that's around 8. Again, I don't know how clearly you can see this, but you can try it with your pH strips and the tubes. So I'm going to say that tube 8 is roughly a pH of 8. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that on my activity scale. All right, so the next one is B. So let's open that up. All right, and I'm going to dip this in, take it out. And so it's still kind of drying out, but you can see that it turned a pretty dark color. And so if I compare it again to my scale on my pH strip box or packet, I can see that that is roughly around 2. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that. Close this out. All right, and I'm going to mark that on my scale again. So I think B is roughly between 2 to 3. And then I'm going to do my last one here. Tube C. So I'm going to open this up. All right, and again, it's still kind of drying out. And I'm going to compare it again to my packet. And to me, it looks like it's about sort of between 5 and 6. So it's sort of a yellowish color. And it actually doesn't look that clear here. But yeah, give this a try at home. It looks to me to be about 5 or 6. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that on my scale. Okay, so now, again, if you want to pause here and like finish your testing of these 3 different tubes, and then I will share what the answers that I got. Okay, so for A, I think it's detergent water. B, I think is vinegar, and C is hand sanitizer. So go ahead and see if your 3 sort of measurements match those 3 items that I just listed off. Okay, so those are my 2 activities. Again, you have a lot of pH strips and a lot of red cabbage juice, so feel free to test out different things in your house. It's fun to test out like your tap water to see what the pH of that is. Again, just like household items. If you are going to work with like more cleaning reagents and stuff, try to be careful with those. Just because if you have a lot of volume directly contacting your skin, that can be bad. But yeah, so that's the pH activity. These are both 2 similar, but slightly different methods of testing pH. And again, you know, just go ahead and test out different liquids that you find in your house. All right, that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for your time.
See you next time.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your summer.